Do you wish your child could read better? I want to stop you worrying right now. Because you know, the majority of children who can't read very well actually are very bright. What I've spent the last 18 years working on is finding out ways of making that critical connection in the brain so that that bright brain that you, the mum, suspects is there, connects and makes reading possible. So what's going on? Why is it that about 1 in 4 children can't read? And why is it that so many parents quite wrongly assume they must have done something wrong, something in their DNA they've transferred to the child, or they've not brought them up properly or not inspired them properly or something? Usually the parents feel guilty and bad and a failure, and the parents are wrong. So I want to make you feel better on all counts right now. First of all, why is it that some children can't read? One of the common assumptions is that child isn't very bright. It's wrong. It's often, in fact, the opposite is the truth. And you've only got to look at some of the most successful millionaires and even billionaires in the world to discover that they rarely do they read that much. Do they read very well at all. So what's going on? Why is it that their genius is hidden behind that front of poor reading skills? Why is it that schools don't pick up on their genius? So many of them even drop out of school. So what's going on? The reason why most children that struggle with reading can't read is because their eye tracking is not fully developed as a skill. That's nothing to do with intelligence, no connection with low levels of intelligence at all. In fact, it's often the reverse. It's a skill that hasn't been fully and finally developed. So to read properly, you need to have visual eye tracking, eye processing, that takes the letters in the right order, in the right way, so that effortlessly in the brain they turn into words that those children comprehend. What happens in children that struggle is that their eye tracking, their eye processing is such that the letters go in a scrambled order. Some letters even go in back to front. So when that child tries to recognize that word, they see a complete scramble of letters. They've never seen that combination of letters before, even if they've seen that same word loads and loads of times. So poor eye tracking means scrambled letters, means huge problems when I'm trying to read. So their thinking brain has to do a lot of processing. They're looking at that scramble, they're trying to unscramble it and turn it into a word. And eventually, often, they can, and they say the word. Great. Then they have to store that word whilst they move on to the next one. Where do they store it? They store it in their thinking brain, and then they move on to the next word. Same thing starts again. Scrambled letters goes in to their thinking brain. They have to unscramble them, do a lot of processing, and eventually they recognize the word, and they store that word. Where? In the thinking brain, and then they move on. So their poor thinking brain is doing a lot of work, and it's having to store all the words in the sentence. But that's the only place they've got to operate. They get to the end of the sentence, and guess what? The thinking brain has been so busy, they've forgotten, they've lost, they've pushed out, in fact, all of those first words in the sentence, and they can't comprehend it. So they have to start reading the sentence again. This is awfully hard work. It's dreadfully hard work. I would say it's literally thousands of times harder trying to read when you've got poor eye tracking than when you've got normally fully developed eye tracking. So there's a few things going wrong. You can't remember the words, you have a lot of processing, it's very slow, it's very tiring, and every time you see a word, you see it in a different way. So how difficult is that going to be for them to remember how to spell? Well, it's a nightmare. It's going to be almost impossible. So I want you to start thinking differently about your child. Your child is not suffering from low levels of intelligence. Your child is suffering from incompletely developed skills. Nothing to do with levels of intelligence. And our skills are all developed here by this body-brain connection. It's called the cerebellum. And it's the bit like the junction box in the brain. And so it helps wire up our vision and our eye tracking skills with our brain so that reading becomes easy. But when the cerebellum hasn't finished its job yet, eye tracking, reading is going to be very, very difficult. Well, there are all sorts of eye tracking skills that you can work on and exercises you can work on and you should look those up because those might just well solve the problem. But for now, I want you to stop worrying about your child so much. Yes, he or she might not find reading easy, but they're probably bright, and there is something you can start doing about it, and sleep better tonight. Your child may not have as serious issues as you first thought. All the best.
Thank you for watching. Maybe you're one of those warrior mums that are determined to do everything for your family. And as you know, we're obsessed with dealing with the root cause in the brain. So please share this with anybody else that you think could benefit, and subscribe too. I've got so much more to share with you that could have huge impact on you and your family.